Ladies and gentlemen, may Tupac Shakur rest in peace. May the notorious B.I.G. rest in peace. May Soulja Slim rest in peace. May Young Dolph rest in peace. May Martin Luther King rest in peace. May Malcolm X rest in peace. May Fred Hampton rest in peace. May Charlie Kirk rest in peace, as they were all victims of gun violence. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like those cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor, click on the thumbs up button. Also subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about something I think a lot of people are kind of missing out on this Charlie Kirk thing. And when we delve deep into what has been going on and how Charlie Kirk rose to fame, may he rest in peace. My condolences to his wife and kids. Like I said, I don't think that he should have been shot, but once again, Charlie Kirk kind of spoke deaf into the air, if you will, and some of the things that he had said, that's between him and God, and what he believed to be what he needed to talk about. But let's talk about this, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to pay real close attention to what I'm about to say, because, like I said, I'm coming from a place of sincerity when I say this. There's a certain thing called gaslighting, right? And when a person gaslights, let's be clear. Let's be real clear. There were a lot of things being said in a lot of the conversations that Charlie Kirk was having on his tour. He was talking about African Americans and gun violence in the black community, and he always seemed to focus on black on black crime, and so much so I want to deal with this. And when I talk about gaslighting, I want to deal with this right here. Check this out. I want you to just understand it. Don't listen to respond. Just listen to understand. Watch this. Right here. And because I see a lot of the news people coming on now and talking about, and he did, like to debate, but the platform that he had was called Prove Me Wrong. Prove me wrong. As if the things that he was saying was right. Look at this. So it says things to remember about Charlie Kirk. He said it was a huge mistake to pass the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Who would feel like that, right? And then in turn, understand what the Civil Rights Act was. And this is what I mean by gaslighting. Charlie Kirk understood what the Civil Rights Act was for, but then said it was a huge mistake, but then would come and talk about DEI. And I'm going to get to another part of this statement in which I'm talking about and where he refers to black women. But I want you to understand this. So he says that it was a huge mistake to pass the Civil Rights Act in 1964. But then, as a 31-year-old, that's how old Charlie Kirk was, he would then come and say that DEI only represented the hiring of unqualified African Americans. Let's not forget the fact that DEI also qualified white women, right? As well as black women, as well as other minorities. But Charlie Kirk always seems to focus on African Americans. And the statement that he made about the black pilot, if I got on a plane and I saw a black pilot, he probably wouldn't fly that plane or whatever have you, right? Notably, all of the black, or should I say inventions, that black people have made, the very stoplight, listen to me, the very stoplight that we stop at each and every day in traffic, right, was invented by an African American. Point blank, period. There's so many other things that we've invented throughout the years that I can't even mention once again, but to focus, once again, not to mention those things, but to focus on the 1964 Civil Rights Act and saying that it was a mistake, when Charlie Kirk knew very well that African Americans were being discriminated against and denied equal opportunity at fair play. If we were granted equal opportunity, there would be no reason for DEI. There would diversity, equity, and inclusion is what that means, right? There wouldn't be no need for it. So when people say that, and when he was saying that, he was speaking to a certain group of people who believed that African Americans, as well as other minorities, did not belong in participating in the economic development and the prosperity of America. And I'm speaking about that in 2025, right? So that's one shot at African Americans. I just want to point this out to you. So the second part, he blamed Jewish money. Think about this now. He blamed Jewish money for ruining America, for ruining the American culture, right? So the first attack was at African Americans and the Civil Rights Act. Just to have civil rights, right? Civil rights. The second attack is made upon Jews, and insinuating he blamed Jewish money for ruining American culture. So most people would say, most Jews would say, my Jewish friends, they would say, well, that's very anti-Semitic of him. He's thinking in some kind of racist way, if you will, right? But that's not what the people that supported Charlie Kirk thought. Because it was his title of his platform was what? Prove me wrong, right? Then he said, gay people are destructive and endorse having them put to death. That's another group of people that Charlie Kirk spoke out against. And what most people would say it was, hatred or bigoted comments that he made about gay people. Now think about this now. Who is Charlie Kirk to say this about all of these groups of people? He is a young white man, right? Speaking against African Americans, speaking against Jews, speaking against gays. And then the final comment, he said, the Second Amendment is worth the cost of some gun deaths. Only to focus on, and there was a video that I seen that a young African American man was debating Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk was basically trying to gaslight him into admitting or gaslight him and being saying some incendiary things involving well, who are the people killing blacks in Chicago? You know what I mean? What color are they? And the sad part about it is that the young man who he was talking to, his answer was, and it was the appropriate answer. His answer was, we're not talking about, he said, I'm not talking about color. He said, it's people killing people in Chicago. And Charlie Kirk kept going and trying to gaslight him. No. What color are they? What color are they? And the young man said again, it doesn't matter what color they are. He said, it's people killing people, right? And so this last statement on here, when he says the Second Amendment is worth the cost of some gun deaths, I thought about something for a minute. I thought about what we're going through at this very minute involving the young man that they're looking for, or they're alleged that is the person of interest, that they're saying that had something to do with the shooting of Charlie Kirk. And he was trying to point out the fact that all of the gun violence and things like that is because of blacks and African Americans. And, you know, another theme that he always spoke on when he did these little tours at these college campuses was, you know, how many black fathers are in the black home and all of these other things. And it was mainly demonizing African Americans, if you will. And then I didn't really know who he was until the situation involving the young girl from Ukraine who got stabbed on the train in North Carolina. I didn't know who he was until that came. I'd never heard of him before, to be perfectly honest with you. But when he talked about what he was talking about in reference to that, I looked out into the crowd and I seen, you know, mostly Caucasian people with MAGA hats and things like that. And I said, oh, I equated it to the YouTube situation where people get on YouTube and they gaslight and they tell these stories and have truths and get people to support them in the things that they're saying, but never can stand up to the truth and facts of the matter. I was like, so he got them. He got the young community believing that the things that he's saying are somehow true. And because they're a part of his tribe or believe that they're conservative or whatever you want to call them, that he's speaking to their plight. I was like, I get it. Okay. Because these different videos, he's asking the same question at every stop. And the same thing that happened just yesterday when he was shot. His last words were talking about gang violence, right? Which predominantly affects the African American community and Latino community. And after the words gang violence, he was shot. As you listen and see below about his Second Amendment comments, right? No one, listen to me, no one should be shot, not even Charlie Kirk. But it doesn't change the fact that he made a profitable career out of spreading hate towards his fellow Americans. Now I need you to look back up at the statements he made. It was the 1964 Civil Rights Act dealing with African Americans. He blamed Jews and Jewish money for ruining American culture. He said gay people are destructive and endorsed having them put to death. He said the Second Amendment is worth the cost of some gun deaths. Charlie Kirk didn't think that he was a part of the human family, did he? He didn't. He couldn't have. Because when he made that last statement, the Second Amendment is worth the cost of some gun deaths, that's how he died. by the hands of a gun. And I want to show you something else. Once again, when we talk about the gaslighting, ladies and gentlemen, because most people are not really paying attention to what Charlie Kirk was doing. Watch this. Some of you may have seen this statement before, and some of you may have not. He says black women like Joy Reid, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Sheila Jackson Lee, may she rest in peace, and Michelle Obama used affirmative action because they did not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously, so they had to steal a white person's slot, ladies and gentlemen. This is classic gaslighting. The lamp is lit with this comment right here. So let's deal with these facts. Joy Reid, who is an articulate black woman, went to college, graduated, right? Ketanji Brown Jackson is a lawyer, a Supreme Court justice. Now, she was nominated by Joe Biden. Ketanji Brown Jackson didn't steal anybody's position. She was highly qualified for the job. She had worked for a law firm. She had paid her dues. She had went to law school. She did all of the things that she needed to do to rise to one of the top judges in the world, in the United States Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen. But Charlie Kirk would say that somehow, some way, somebody he didn't even know, and the fact of the matter, when Ketanji Brown Jackson was going to school, in law school, I don't even think Charlie Kirk was even born. But here's a 31-year-old young man who seized the moment and could speak to people and gaslight them into believing the lies that he was actually telling were true. Ketanji Brown Jackson didn't steal any white person's slot. How? Well, Joy Reid just got let go on MSNBC. Right? You didn't hear Joy Reid come and say, oh, they fired me because somebody else came and stole. She accepted it gracefully and started her own podcast. And people are listening to what she has to say. Like it, don't like it, right? Sheila Jackson Lee, right? Once again, very well respected. Very well respected. Didn't have to steal anybody's position, right? Held her own. Did what she needed to do, paid her dues, went to school, got elected. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Obama. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. See, I want you to understand something, because I'm going to point something out to you about Michelle Obama that I think most people know about. Watch this. So, Michelle Obama, didn't she write her speech that Melania Trump stole? Did Melania Trump copy Michelle Obama's speech during Trump's first term? Michelle Obama is an attorney. Michelle Obama went to Princeton and Harvard. Top of her class, right? But once again, when the gaslighter is allowed to gaslight and tell lies, right? The people that I saw in those crowds when I watched those YouTube videos, I was like, wow, Charlie Kirk got him. He got him with the gaslight. Because you think like he thinks, right? And he was, it wasn't, it was bigoted. These are bigoted comments, right? Not based in fact at all. Michelle Obama used affirmative action because they didn't have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken seriously, so they had to steal a white person's slot. Amazing. Amazing, ladies and gentlemen. None of this is true. None of it's true. And the sad part about it is contradictory to history, because history tells us that at one time blacks couldn't vote. We couldn't read, right? We didn't go to the same schools as Caucasians. None of those things. So how is it that these women here stole a white person's slot? It's simply not true. But Charlie Kirk had him. He had him, right? And so it took me to go to the situation, because this is when I first heard about it, because I didn't know about him. And so I did a little research. And so then it took me to this situation right here. And I want you to pay attention, because this was one of the last things that Charlie Kirk talked about. This situation right here is the situation involving the African-American young man who senselessly, needlessly killed the young Caucasian young lady from Ukraine. She was a refugee. She did not deserve to die. She is a human being. She is a woman. And I'm going to speak on it, point blank, period. It looked like she was getting off from work. And, she didn't deserve to die. She didn't deserve to be harmed. She didn't deserve to be touched at all. Point blank, period. Right? The family of this young man said that this young man here who killed her suffered from mental issues. I don't know if it's true or not. All I know is that she did not deserve to die. As you can see, she's looking at her phone, probably on her way home, and it's sad. It's sad. It's sickening. You know what I mean? Point blank, period. You can't offer no excuse for this. I'm not going to gaslight nothing. I'm going to keep it straight. Straight game. This is what we do over here. Now watch this. So, Charlie Kirk, he decided that he wanted to take this and point out the fact that this guy did this to her because she happened to be white. I don't know what his motivation was. Then I heard some kind of video in the background. I'm keeping it all the way 100. That he said something. I think he said something about the white girl or something like that. I don't know what the context of what he was saying was. And Charlie Kirk said, well, if this was a white man who stabbed somebody who was black, then the media would be all over it and saying this and saying that, and they would be trying to change gun laws and do all of these things. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, taking this situation and trying to gaslight and race bait and get people to think, or mainly I would say Caucasian, as you can see his whole plight when he talk about stealing a white person's slot, right? The 1964, he was talking about Jewish people and money and all of those things. And then he says that this guy right here wouldn't have done what he done. He only did it because she was white. And I thought about it for a minute. I was like, hold on. He just said that if something happened to somebody that was, that if somebody, a white did that to somebody that was black, the media would be all over it and it would change gun laws and things like that. This right here was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I thought for a minute and I said, hold on. And then I remembered this. I said to myself, Charlie Kirk knows better. Well, at least he should. I said, because just like that young lady did not deserve to have anything done to her wrong, the 9 black people at that church in South Carolina that were praying, that thought Dylan Roof wanted to come in and pray with them, they didn't deserve to die either. As a matter of fact, it was said that the police took Dylan Roof to Burger King or McDonald's to get something to eat after they arrested him because he said he was hungry. Charlie Kirk knew about this. It was major news, true indeed, but there were no gun laws that were changed. Nothing happened. As a matter of fact, Dylan Roof smiled. You see the look on his face right here. This is an actual photo superimposed over the pictures of the 9 people that he killed. Just like that young man who killed that young lady on the subway train station didn't deserve to die. These 9 people didn't deserve to die. But I'm not even going to focus on color, because it's not even about that, really, truly, and honestly. Just like the young man who was debating Charlie Kirk, he tried to explain to Charlie Kirk when Charlie Kirk was trying to get him to admit that African Americans were killing most of the African Americans in Chicago with gun violence, right? It was somebody with a gun that killed these 9 people who just happened to be Caucasian. It was somebody with a knife who just happened to be African American that killed that young lady who just happened to be Caucasian. And it was somebody who appears, as we don't know yet, who appears to be Caucasian, who allegedly killed Charlie Kirk. I say that to contrast the 2, or should I say the 3, the black guy killing the young lady on the train, Dylan Roof killing the African Americans at the church, and then what appears to be a white guy killing another white guy, talking about gang violence, and those being his last words before he was shot. So it's not a color problem, but Charlie Kirk was gaslighting it, trying to get his tribe or his people to buy into the ideology that they were using. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. They're not qualified. Are you kidding me? Who built the White House? African Americans. Slaves built the White House. Right? Who built some of the railroad? Japanese. Right? Everybody has made a contribution. But this situation here, it's a human problem. It ain't got nothing to do with the color of nobody's skin, because if that were the fact, then what appears to be a Caucasian male shot Charlie Kirk. So how do they explain that one then? I wonder what Charlie Kirk would say, may he rest in peace. I wonder what he would say about the guy who shot him. And it appearing to be the person of interest, appearing to be somebody who's Caucasian. I say that to say this, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, when we understand what's going on, right? Talking about Charlie Kirk, yeah, the conservative guy who was outspoken, who built his whole career off of gaslighting young people, ladies and gentlemen, manipulating minds and pushing agendas. But now the smoke is in the air. The gun smoke, right? Like I said, there was another thing, and if you look at the title of the video, there was another thing that came about. Most people didn't see this, and most people are saying, you see a lot of, I think Republicans, I don't do the Republican Democrat thing. I don't, the far right, the far left. I do the human thing. How are you as a human being? You know, I don't care what political party you represent. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or, or whatever you are. Yeah, okay. Right? But what I'm saying to you is this. There was a situation or a video that Charlie Kirk, he talked about Epstein. He said Jeffrey Epstein was blackmailing political figures and some of the most powerful people in the world, right? Floating that around. Now we know that we're dealing with trying to get the Epstein files released and all of those things. Why would Charlie Kirk say something like that? Was he gaslighting? Was he trying to get views when he said that, Epstein wasn't a financier? He wasn't a hedge fund manager. Epstein was somebody who was blackmailing politicians and some of the most powerful people in the world for years. Those are Charlie Kirk's words. Could it have been the people that he was saying that about, knowing that had something to do with his death? We don't know. We don't. But I seen people saying the people on the far left, they have something to do with this. They don't even know who the guy is that allegedly killed Charlie Kirk, but they already got a theory or want to blame the far left or I guess liberals or whatever they say it is. It's amazing. I'm like, wow. Once again, it's called gaslighting, ladies and gentlemen. We don't know who that guy is that jumped off of that roof, that was seen up on that roof in the new video that came out, that where he's jumping down off the roof. We don't know who he is. We don't know who he represents. He appears to be white. He could not be white. He could very well be something else. He could very well be not even from America. We don't even know. Right? So now, the Epstein blackmail allegation floating around, and the deeper question, why did this man hate empathy so much? Charlie Kirk, he said, I have no empathy. I hate the word empathy. Why did he hate empathy so much? So basically, he's saying he couldn't be empathetic to anybody who, I guess, didn't look like him, didn't believe what he believed, right? And a lot of times when I listened to him speak, he would say, somebody would say something, he would say, so what I said was true then, right? Without any proof. And the crowd behind him would be like, yeah, get him, Charlie. And I was like, wow. There's no research being done. People are just taking him for what he was saying. That African Americans were stealing white people's slots. The furthest thing from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. The furthest thing from the truth. See, it's like saying, well, Barack Obama, when he became president, Barack Obama was articulate, smart. He had went to Harvard graduate, right? Qualified, dignified. The only thing that they could ever say about Barack Obama was when he wore a tan suit, and they made that into a scandal. That tan suit that he wore that time, ladies and gentlemen, right? Crazy. And they talked about just earlier this year, they was like, we're going to investigate Oprah and Beyonce and Barack Obama, right? Anything to get away from what Charlie Kirk was talking about. He said Epstein wasn't no hedge fund investor. Epstein was a blackmailer. He was blackmailing some of the most powerful politicians and leaders in the world. These are Charlie Kirk's words, ladies and gentlemen. Not mine. Look it up, right? And here's where it gets really real, right? Because Charlie Kirk's, he represents politics. We've seen, play out thousands of times in the hip hop industry, right? The same tactics, in like I said, in hip hop, there's politics and, and the regular politics of politicians, right? It's a different stage. Let's break it down, right? See, gaslighting is simple. When you can tell somebody, right, that what they saw, they didn't really see, right? And what they're feeling is not really real, right? They flip the narrative around to make you question your reality, right? This is what happens when somebody gaslights you, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, gaslighting, it's simple for the people who don't really know. It's when somebody tells you what you saw. You saw that, right? What you felt ain't real. Right? It's kind of like the letter that Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein in that lady thing that came out, and he signed it. And then you look at the signature, Marjorie Greene Taylor, she put something up in the halls of Congress the other day with that signature, with another signature with the picture. And it's like basically telling you that what you've become to see, you haven't really saw, and that's not really real. It's amazing. It's called gaslighting. It was the same game that Charlie Kirk was playing, and I was like, oh, wow. So what we just saw, or what we're seeing, we didn't see it. It's not the same as this right here. This is the game that's being played, right? So you see, the narrative gets flipped to make you question reality. And Charlie Kirk, man, that was his whole playbook. His whole playbook. His whole playbook. In dealing with African Americans and all of the things, like I said, once again, he'd stand in front of college crowds. Listen, Charlie Kirk was standing in front of college crowds, cameras rolling, and tell broke students struggling with debt that billionaires are the victims. He actually sat there and told the college students, he told the college students in one video I watched, he told them, and now mind you, Charlie Kirk didn't graduate college. He dropped out, right? He would tell them that they were being scammed. I'm like, what? Hold on. So you come to a college campus to talk to people who are willing to listen to you, respectfully listen to you. Some of them follow you. Some of them believe in what you say, only to tell them that their mother and father, them paying for them going to school, that they're being scammed. These are all in videos that I watched. I was like, oh, wow. Once again, telling them that what they're doing, it ain't really real and it ain't really worth it. And that they're stupid for going to school because they being scammed. Also, listen, Charlie Kirk would also say this, in which we know as African Americans and other minorities, he'd say that systematic racism don't exist while reaping the benefits of a system designed on it. Ladies and gentlemen, he would sit there and say that systematic racism don't exist while reaping the benefits of a system designed on it, ladies and gentlemen. That's gaslighting. Straight psychological warfare. And I don't mean warfare and violence. I mean warfare when you're playing with people's minds, right? Because you're in a position of being elevated and you highly visible on Fox Network, on this channel, on that channel. So people come to see you as somebody to respect or somebody to be heard or to be listened to. Right? Now here comes the bombshell. Right? Rumors circulating, Epstein blackmail files, names being dropped, and Charlie Kirk's in the mix, right? Whether he's knee deep or just standing too close to the fire. One thing is clear, when manipulation is your currency, you will eventually attract predators who operate the same way. I'm going to say it again. When manipulation is your currency, you will eventually attract predators who operate the same way. And see, this ties to power. Epstein didn't just move with money, he moved with leverage, right? He gaslit his victims. And according to Charlie Kirk, he blackmailed the elites, right? That's why his name keeps popping up. And if Charlie Kirk was anywhere near that orbit, you already know what type of games are being played. Now we're dealing with this situation. Think about it. Once again, so everybody's saying, well, you know, it's political. We really don't even know yet. There's a lot of stuff being said in the media. We still don't know who this guy is that jumped off the roof, that allegedly shot him. We don't know what his motivation was. And so I always tell people, right? So, you know, you deal with, you know, why did Charlie Kirk hate empathy so much? Let's get into the psychology, y'all. Why does a dude like Kirk despise empathy? Because empathy kills control. Right? Empathy kills control. If you can feel for somebody, if you can see their struggle, then you can't exploit them easily. Right? Once again, I see somebody, who's that? Let's talk about TV. He said, leave politics alone. I'm talking about gaslighting. I'm talking about facts. This ain't about politics. This is about facts. If you don't want to listen, you free to leave. I appreciate you, but you free to leave. You don't have to listen to a word I say, but I'm going to say it again. Let's talk about the psychology, ladies and gentlemen. Why did Charlie Kirk despise empathy so much? Because empathy kills control. If you can feel for somebody, if you can see their struggle, you can't exploit them as easily. That's why he mocked empathy, ladies and gentlemen. That's why he mocked empathy and called it weakness. These are facts. Like I said, a lot of people are just coming and jumping on the bandwagon and really haven't done their research to understand what's been said and what's really going on. It's the same thing in hip hop. Remember, Charlie Kirk talked about hip hop and rap music. That was one of the things that really truly got my attention. I was like, oh, wow. It was like, so what about these rappers rapping about all blase blah? I'm like, oh. And I do understand some of what he was saying. But it's entertainment. It's no different than watching a movie and somebody doing the same thing. Right? Right? The same in hip hop. Labels gaslight artists all the time. They tell them, you know, you broke without us. You ain't nothing without this deal. Meanwhile, they eating off the artist's pain, trauma, and struggle. Think about it. That's why I can talk about this so easily, because like I said, the correlation to hip hop, politics, and the politics of the music industry, it's all basically one and the same. And if an artist dares to show empathy for their own community, think about it, y'all. If an artist dares show empathy for their own community, start talking about ownership, start fighting for fair splits, suddenly they're labeled difficult or ungrateful. Sound familiar? Right? Does it sound familiar? Right? Listen, that's the same play Kirk ran in politics. Like I said, once again, when you understand what that is. Ladies and gentlemen, the parallels in hip hop, right? Look, the manipulation game don't care if it's a voting booth or a recording booth, ladies and gentlemen. The manipulation game doesn't care if it's a recording booth or a voting booth. Whether it's Charlie Kirk flipping narratives for political clout or label execs gaslighting artists for profits, the root is the same: deception, control, and the erasure of truth, ladies and gentlemen. It's as simple as that. You got to understand something. Even Tupac Shakur saw this coming. He rapped about it. He spoke about it. He called out the government, the industry, the whole system, the manipulation, right? What did Tupac say? What did he say? Politicians are hypocrites. They don't want to listen. Right? He talked about it in his music. See, this is the thing about most people who come into the chat and they want to talk crazy. Don't speak on nothing that you don't know because you can't articulate about politics and things of that nature. Right? Tupac said what? Politicians are hypocrites. They don't want to listen. So when we talk about this, you got to understand. He spoke about the system, the manipulation. And just like Charlie Kirk gaslit youth into doubting their own struggles, the record labels gaslit entire generations of rappers into selling out their own voices. Right? It was a video I seen the other day, Tupac, and I had never seen this video. Tupac was talking about the industry. He said, yeah, you know, things, it ain't like it used to be, you know, these record labels telling you what to say and what you could talk about and what you can't talk about. He started to get it. See, most of the rappers today are not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that that's what they're being taught to say. The music is being screened. And you can say that if you talk about shooting 9 people, 15 different people in one song, oh man, we playing this. This is going to get a heavy rotation right here. But most people can't see the correlation. They can't see the correlation, right? And so they speak because they can't articulate what it is, right? Listen. So when you hear these Epstein allegations tied to Charlie Kirk, now listen, when he said this, you got to understand, he said it. I didn't say it. I'm listening to what he said. I'm like, oh, wow. Right? Don't just see it as one man's scandal. See the bigger picture, how manipulation, gaslighting, and the destruction of empathy run hand in hand in both politics and music. We got to sharpen up, ladies and gentlemen. Stop falling for the gaslight. Start demanding truth, whether it's from a politician, a record label, or so-called friend in your circle. Right? If they're trying to erase your reality, you already know they don't have your best interests at heart. If you telling somebody you saw something and you seen it and you know it, and they telling you, nah, man, you didn't see that, man, right? You already know that person doesn't have your best interests at heart. Correct? So like I said, when I talked about what I said earlier, you know, I want to go back to it for the people that just stepped in the room, because they stepping in the room. They stepping in the room and they don't really understand what's going on, right? They don't understand what's going on. I took them there. Look, watch this. Read it. When Charlie Kirk made these statements, right? He said that it was a huge mistake to pass the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Who was he referring to? African Americans, right? He blamed Jewish people. It was Jewish money for ruining American culture. He's against, I guess Jewish money or whatever that meant. I don't even know what that means. But evidently he was trying to touch on something that he was speaking to a group of people that would resonate with what he was saying. He said that gay people are destructive and endorsed having them put to death. And last but not least, he said that the Second Amendment is worth the cost of some gun deaths, ladies and gentlemen. Was he speaking to his own demise when he said that? Think about it. He said the Second Amendment is worth the cost of some gun deaths. right? And as it says, no one should be shot, not even Charlie Kirk. But it doesn't change the fact that he made a profitable career out of spreading hate towards his fellow Americans and gaslighting. Let me say this. I want you to understand this. And this is even worse when you look at this. This is what he said about black women. Black women like Joy Reid, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who was a Supreme Court justice, ladies and gentlemen. Sheila Jackson Lee, former Congresswoman, ladies and gentlemen. And Michelle Obama, who's a lawyer in her own right, used affirmative action because they do what they say, they do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken seriously, so they had to steal a white person's slot. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, if you do not know, Charlie Kirk did not even finish college. All of the women that he just mentioned went to college, so they definitely did not steal his spot. He didn't finish college, ladies and gentlemen. How can someone who didn't finish college talk about 4 women who did and saying that they stole a white person's spot? They damn sure didn't steal his. And one is a Supreme Court justice. Today, Michelle Obama, lawyer, Harvard, Princeton. Right? I need you to think about that for a minute. You know, and let me say this. When they did the DEI and they were doing the Doge thing, right? The thing I tripped off from, you know, being from the DMV, and I know a lot of people, you know, out there in politics and things like that, you know, and when you understand something, and you gotta understand this, over 300,000 people lost their job, man. They lost their careers. And I was thinking about the guy who they're looking for, who they say allegedly is the guy of interest, you know, if he is the guy who shot Charlie Kirk. Like I say, may Charlie Kirk rest in peace, and condolences to his family. But these are the truths that he spoke. These are the things that he spoke about. You can't run away from that. Point blank, period. Like I said, I don't think he deserved to be shot, but, you know, he spoke a lot into the air. He spoke a lot of hate into the air, bigoted comments and things like that into the air. But I don't know if the guy who shot him was affected by some of the things that he may have said about African Americans, because he wasn't African American. You understand that? So, you know, when they were looking and saying, oh, you know, trying to figure out who it was, well, the guy that they put up on the screen, he appears to be a Caucasian young man. And then I thought about the DEI thing, because the DEI thing also affected white women. They would, what you would consider a diversity, equity, and inclusion hires also, right? And I said to myself, could this guy be married or the child of somebody who lost their job? Who then in turn, they lost their home? Who then in turn lost some other things? And he felt like he had to go and exact some kind of revenge? It could be something as simple as that. We don't even know. We don't even know. And that's the crazy part about it. You know, like I said, you got to be careful about how you do people and what you do to people, because you think that you doing something within your right, within your realm, within your power. I posted something on the on my feed earlier, ladies and gentlemen. I posted something on my feed earlier, on my post feed on my channel, you know, and I'm gonna read it to you, right? You know, and this is what I said. A lot of people had the problem with the word assassination. So I'm gonna give it to you like this. With the shooting of Charlie Kirk, a self-identified conservative and supporter of President Donald J. Trump, the nation is reminded once again, as Malcolm X warned, bullets, not ballots, too often decide the fate of a country. Our history is scarred by assassinations. Many remain unresolved. The killing of President John F. Kennedy, the murders of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, right? Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and others. George Lincoln Rockwell, founder of the American Nazi Party, and pictured in the collage accompanying this post, also fell to political violence. The late Dick Gregory often said that if you are against assassinations, you must be consistent. That remains our problem as a nation. Some of the very politicians now condemning Kirk's murder were silent when Minnesota House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed in a politically motivated attack just months ago. We cannot be selective in our outrage. Assassinations must be condemned across the board, regardless of the ideology of the victim. Yet already voices on the right are pointing fingers at radical left-wingers without a shred of evidence. The killing of Charlie Kirk underscores an unsettling truth. Who occupies public office matters greatly. Having lived through an era that saw the assassinations of black leaders, deaths that were both senseless and unresolved, I can only lament that today's climate demands public officials take every possible measure to safeguard themselves and their families. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "It is nonviolence or non-existence." Sadly, too many extremists today have chosen the path of demanding the non-existence of the political or of their political opponents. Until this nation has leadership that is willing to call for peace and reject violence without exception, these tragedies will continue to stain our democracy, ladies and gentlemen. And that's from the brother Carl Snowden, who's a civil rights leader in the caucus of the African Americans. Like I said, a guy that I grew up watching, civil rights leader march with Jesse Jackson and done a lot of the community work, and trying to forward the progress of African Americans, ladies and gentlemen. So like I said, once again, most people who want to see things the way that they want to see them, I respect that. But at the end of the day, when you think about the big picture, yeah, this is what it is. This is what it is. So why was, Charlie Kirk killed? We don't know yet. We don't know. What was on the young man's mind that jumped off the roof, that they alleged, was the killer, the pictures that they are showing? What was his motive? We don't know yet. We don't know if it had anything to do with politics or whether his mother or his grandmother lost their job, lost their house, and, didn't like what, Charlie Kirk was saying about certain things. We just don't know. And like I said, I just reserve the right to try to understand it. Like I say, may he rest in peace. Condolences to his family. Because like I said, under the circumstances, I don't think he should have got shot. But like I said, the comment that he made, when he said this, he said the Second Amendment is worth the cost of some gun deaths. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate everybody for watching. Your boy Delray, straight gang.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each remember they used to